You may recognize our next guest from her many years in provincial politics, including a bid a couple of years ago for the leadership of Ontario's Progressive Conservative Party. While she has now stepped away from politics, she is still working to give voice to Ontarians in her new role as this province's first ever patient ombudsman. And with that, we welcome Christine Elliott to TVO to find out more about her new job. Welcome back to our studio.
It's great to be here, Steve. Thank you.
Why does Ontario need a patient ombudsman to begin with?
Well, I think there's so many people in Ontario that have had experiences that haven't been ideal. I think the government recognized that and also recognized the need to have a specialized place for people to be able to come to. So we have that knowledge and experience in our office. We have people who are trained clinicians, but we also have people who are trained in mediation too to try and solve some of the problems that people are facing.
Here's what the Minister of Health has tasked you with doing. We'll read along as they bring up the graphic. To respond to unresolved complaints from patients, residents, and clients about hospitals, long-term care homes, or community care access centers, to investigate health sector organizations on your own initiative, and to make recommendations to a health sector organization following an investigation. So that's the job. Let's dive in on this a bit more. Unresolved complaints would mean what?
Complaints that people have about their care in hospitals that can range anything from, the parking rates, for example, or it can be something where a loved one may have died while in a hospital and they have some unresolved concerns and issues about it. That's where we get involved and we try to mediate a resolution to try and find out what's happened. We're not patient advocates in the sense that we don't advocate for the patient every single time. We are a true patient ombudsman in the traditional sense that we advocate for fairness in healthcare. So that's what we try and find and try and resolve things to patient satisfaction.
And how do you decide, yes, this is a case we will go forward with, this one, not so sure?
Sometimes it's a question of judgment. It's a question of taking a look at all of the information that's applicable and relevant and making a determination about whether we proceed or not.
And is it your call?
Yes, ultimately it is my call.
Ultimately it's your
yes.
call. If you do investigate, let's say somebody had a loved one go into the hospital and they didn't come out. They perished for whatever reason.
Yes.
Like, do you have subpoena powers, or what are you able to do as an investigator to look into this? We can
summons witnesses and we can go into premises to conduct investigations. We do have those powers. Of course, we hope we don't have to use them, but we can if it's necessary, and then we can make recommendations. But like the Ombudsman of Ontario, we can't force anybody to do anything as a result of those investigations and recommendations. We just have the power of moral suasion, as the Ombudsman does, and that's what we're going to be using.
Well, you've been in politics for a long time.
Yes.
The use of moral suasion, how often does that work these days?
Well, I think you have to make a good case, and I think you have to argue to the best of your ability. And so far, the minister has indicated that he wants our office to be strong and independent, and he knows that we're not always going to make recommendations he's going to like, but he's told me that he wants me to do my job and do what I think is necessary on behalf of patients and families.
Now, that can go the other way as well, which is you investigate on behalf of patients, and then you have to go back to patients and say, look, they actually did everything fine. It didn't work out, but it went fine.
Yes.
How do you deliver that kind of news to somebody who doesn't want that kind of news?
Well, sometimes we have to do that because that's the nature of our work. We advocate for fairness in healthcare, so we have to listen to what everybody involved has to say, and that includes the health sector organizations. And you're right, sometimes people aren't going to like that news, but the reality is we are going to fully investigate things and report on our findings.
Have you got enough resources to do the job well?
We have a small but mighty team, and of course you'd always want more resources, but I feel confident that we can do the job right now with what we have.
Small and mighty means what?
We've got 17 people, total complement in our office, and it is still early days. So there's still a lot of Ontarians that don't know about us yet and don't know the work that we're doing. And that's my challenge, I guess, for going forward into 2017 is to try and be as accessible and as inclusive as possible. So that means traveling to parts of Ontario, that particularly far northern Ontario, to speak about the work we do, getting in touch with people in hospitals, particularly forensic patients in mental health hospitals, people who are otherwise marginalized. So there's still a lot of work that I have to do to get out and speak about what we do in our office.
Are a lot of people complaining so far?
Yes, we've received over 700 complaints so far since
In just
July.
a few months you've been up.
Just a few months we've been open. So there's a lot of unresolved issues out there, and so we're working hard on them.
I'm doing the math here. 700 complaints among 17 staffers. I mean, you got a full load there. How long does it take to get through to decide?
It's busy. Well, some of them can be fairly easily resolved, and that's what, of course, we try to do, is that early resolution. Some of them are more complicated, and some of them might involve, for example, a complaint about a hospital and a physician and maybe a long-term care home. We can't deal with complaints against regulated health professionals. They have to go to their respective colleges. But what we are finding is that some of these more complicated cases, people want us to almost be a navigator for them to help them through it. Even in situations where there are parts of it we can't investigate, we sort of help them. We're sort of like the quarterbacks, I guess, to pull it all together for people.
You spent long enough in politics to know that sometimes very troubled people make complaints. Yes. And, you know, for example, if you haven't already, I suspect at some point you're going to get a complaint from somebody who said they were captured by a UFO and the aliens are making contact through them, through the silver in their fillings and their teeth, and damn it, they're going to be all over you to make sure you investigate this and get to the bottom of it. How do you handle those kind of cases?
Well, our tagline is every experience matters, and it's really important to us that we listen, really listen to people to understand what the nature of their complaint is. And sometimes they seem like they're very unusual, but in every case, we really look at it to see if we can be involved. But you're right, sometimes there are cases like that where there may be elements of things that we could investigate, but the largest part of it is not investigatable. So that's where we just have to tell people in that case that we're not able to help them. And that's difficult because you do want to be able to help everybody, particularly in situations where people may have mental health challenges.
Who does the Ombudsman answer to?
In my case, I'm not an independent officer of the legislature, but I do provide a report at least annually to the Minister of Health.
Okay. I mean, let's spend a little bit of time on that, because obviously the Auditor General reports to the legislature, the Environmental Commissioner of Ontario reports to the legislature, the Information and Privacy Commissioner, I could go on. You report to the Minister of Health, which suggests to me, at any rate, that that's different, that you very directly work for him. And people are going to wonder whether or not that compromises on your independence at all. What do you think?
Well, it's not considered a reporting relationship. I just submit reports to him. So there is a difference there, but there has been some concern about the independence of the office. We have heard that from patients and families, and what I've told people is that I'm going to report what I find, and I'm going to be as independent as possible within the boundaries of the office. And I believe it was set up the way it was to allow me to work with health sector organizations to find solutions. And I think that's a positive thing.
On the other hand, you used to be the health critic for the Ontario PC Party. So you used to get up in the legislature and ask the current Minister of Health questions which you hoped would be as embarrassing as possible to the government of the day. And now you sort of report to this guy. Is that odd?
No, I don't think it is at all, because to me it's always been about finding issues and dealing with them, and that's the nature of the relationship we have now. When I was at Queen's Park as a politician, I would raise issues with a view to getting them resolved. So I raise issues in the same way now, with the same goal to getting them resolved.
Has there been any time in the last, 6 months that you've actually got the office up and going, where you have felt concerned about the level of independence you have to do your job?
Well, I had made representations to the committee on Bill 41, the Patients First Act, asking the government to make my office an independent office of the legislature because of those perceived concerns that I had heard from patients. But I suspect that it's going to take a little bit more time. I understand that did not happen in the amendments to the Act, but I think it's rather like the Office of the French Language Commissioner, Mr. Boileau, where it took a few years. You have to establish your credibility and your track record, and I'm hoping that in time the government will see fit to make it an independent office. But in the meantime, it doesn't really affect what I do on a day-to-day basis. I still conduct my investigations completely independently, and I'll continue to do that.
Can I drag you into politics a little bit here? Do you think if the Conservatives were the government of the day, they might see it your way?
I can't really speculate on that. I am totally nonpartisan now.
Now, isn't that weird? I mean, you spent,
Yes.
obviously, I mean, you were a partisan politician for many years. Your late husband, Jim Flaherty, was a partisan politician for many years, same party. Now, all of a sudden, you've got to kind of ditch all that partisanship. Is that hard to do?
Not really. Not for me, because the reason why I got involved in politics in the first place was really because of my interest in healthcare issues and helping people with disabilities and special needs. And so I get to do that in this job. So I can get to continue that passion from the old job into the new job. And I don't have to run for an election anymore. So that's not a bad thing.
That is true. So now the gig you've got right now, I guess you used to have to get re-employed every 4 years by the voters.
Yes.
Are you on a term right now?
Yes, it's a 5-year term that is renewable once. So I'm not quite finished my first year yet.
Gotcha. Knowing what you know about the healthcare system from your time as a critic, from your time as a parent, having to interact with it, and so on, what do you think? What aspect of the healthcare system do you think needs attention the most right now?
I think a lot of it is in terms of transitions. I think that's what we're hearing most about from people, transitions from hospital to home or hospital to long-term care. I think that there's a lot of work that we can do to make it more seamless for patients, and for, if you really want to have a truly patient-focused system of healthcare, I think you really have to follow the patient's journey as they go through each of those stages and work to make that as positive an experience as possible. So I think, generally speaking, transitions is where we're really concentrating our efforts.
But just so I'm clear, I mean, that transition can start with the GP, it can go to hospital, it can go to
Yes.
specialist, it can go to, depending on the age, long-term care home. I mean, there are any number of different way stations, if you like, in the healthcare system. But if you've got a problem with your doctor, with your GP, we don't really go to you, do we?
No, that's still outside of my mandate. It's just hospitals, long-term care homes, and home and community care through CCACs.
Is that something you want to change about your mandate as well?
Again, I had asked through the committee hearings on Bill 41 to ask that the LHINs, local health integration networks, be placed under my jurisdiction as well, because currently the LHINs are the responsibility of the Ombudsman of Ontario. The CCACs, Community Care Access Corporations, are my responsibility. They're going to be merged together as a result of Bill 41, and patients are finding it really confusing.
Geez, I can't imagine why. So
well,
wait
a lot
sec.
of people don't know what a LHIN is or a CCAC.
Right.
There's no real reason why they should. They just know that they want to get care for themselves or for their loved one. So again, I'd like to see that as seamless as possible, and so that's why I asked for that jurisdiction.
But we're turned down.
Yes, at committee and in legislative amendments that were made to the bill.
Do you have a way of revisiting that over the years, or do you plan to revisit that over the years?
Well, I think what at this point we're going to do is wait and see what happens with the new system, because the LHINs are going to have to deal with that too, to figure out where to refer people, which ombudsman, because there's two of us that could be involved, and then we'll see what that experience is, and certainly we'll be making recommendations if that continues to be a point of concern for patients and families, and it's sort of wait and see right now.
Okay, we talk mostly policy on this program, but we talk a little bit of politics, and I want to ask you a little bit about politics.
Sure.
Given the fact that it's a Liberal government in power right now, and you are a former member of the Progressive Conservative Party, a former MPP for that party, were you at all surprised when you got the call to do this job?
I didn't actually get a call from anyone in government. I actually got a call from the recruiting company that they had employed to do the search. And at that point, I was considering my options, and the recruiter asked me if I'd be interested in applying for the job. And I did, and I was interviewed by a group of about 6 people. And I understand they interviewed other people as well, but I was certainly really happy, very pleased to be offered the position.
But I presume it was the minister and or the premier who, at the end of the day, signed off on it. Yes?
The minister called me and offered me the job, yes.
And again, was that not, I mean, in some respects, that's a bit of a surreal moment, isn't it?
It was a little different because of having been involved in politics for so long, but I think during the course of my time at Queen's Park, I always tried to concentrate on the issues and not on any personal stuff, not being nasty at Queen's Park. I tried to just stick with the facts, and so hopefully that played a part. I don't really know, but I'm certainly more than happy to be in this job because it really is almost like a dream job for me, being able to work on resolving people's individual concerns about the healthcare system, but also to be able to look at the bigger picture at some systemic issues and make recommendations from the patient's perspective. And that's what patients have told me that they want me to do, is to almost be that conduit to represent the patient voice at the level of policy and decision makers.
Do you miss politics at all?
I miss a lot of the people. I miss being at Queen's Park sometimes, but I'm certainly really happy with the work that I'm doing now.
You were how many years in it at the end of the day? It was almost a decade, wasn't it?
It was 9 years.
9
A
years.
little over 9 years as an elected rep.
All on the opposition benches, though.
Yes.
You wish it got to the government side? How often do you think about that?
I certainly do wish that. That is my biggest regret, I guess. But, you know, you have certain opportunities in life, and I tried to make the most of my time there with the select committees that I participated on. And I think anybody that did participate on those committees said that it was among the best work that they did at Queen's Park, including some cabinet ministers now. So I really fondly remember my time there and having the chance to work with people from all political parties.
Great. Enjoy the new job.
Thank you.
And good luck with it.
I appreciate that.
That's
Thanks.
Christine Elliott, the new patient ombudsman for the province of Ontario.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.